All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts.
Right here, if you have a beard, random men are going to always walk up to you and try to lick your beard.
Ew, that's so disgusting.
You're one of Ben's
So-
kitten.
Hold on. Oh, so I'm like, nope. Oh, well, you lost all your fleets.
Oh fuck. Not what we intended. Oh god. What do we do?
The Meta Show.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Meta Show. I'm back from Atlanta, so no more loud ballroom noises today, thank God.
Oh my.
Yes, exactly. So we have the Mittani here, and we've had a really eventful week with the CSM Summit and the 07 show, the return of the 07 show. So we should have a lot of stuff to jump straight into. So we have a little bit of nullsec news that we'll jump into first, and then we'll go from there straight into CCP, please.
It is tons and tons of CCP police stuff going on. I mean, the Citadel dev blog was massive. The CSM Summit, now there's an announcement. We're actually going to find out what's happening with capitals and super capitals revealed at Vegas. I think that CCP Seagull returned and took control, and now we're seeing a lot of changes, and they're all positive. So it's nice to see that happening. So hello, everyone, and I'm glad that we're no longer hearing whatever bar that was in Atlanta. Me having to handle that last time was a little bit too exciting, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a while since you've hosted it, so that was kind of a lot to throw on you for the first time in a while.
I know. Alrighty, well, let's get into it. So, nullsec news, we want to talk about what happened to Black Legion.
Yeah, I think that's really the only major nullsec news there is from this week, and Black Legion looks to have kind of locked its doors. It's down to 115 members in the actual Black Legion Alliance, and from that point, you have Elo Knight actually in Snuffbox, which Snuffbox is where his friend went and what started all the drama in the first place. So now, even though he calls all those waves, they're still ending back up in Snuffbox. That's kind of
That's basically... That's ridiculous. Like, if he wanted to just join Snuffbox, he could have preserved his alliance, handed it over to Ragnar Bile or to Capri Sun Craft Foods or any of the other guys over there. But, you know, it wouldn't be nullsec if it wasn't for guild drama. Whenever you have a Hold Superman's Cape alliance, if Superman decides to go fart around in lowsec, then that's pretty much all she wrote.
Yeah, so you do have Ipsimus, Fire Elf, and Dog of War, and some other noble names have actually joined, not Capri Suns, but Ipsimus, New Corp, I believe it's called, I have it pulled up, one second. It's called, Carpe Noctem. Carpe Noctem is
Seize
Ipsimus
the Night. That sounds like a kind of goth club that I would have gone to back in the day.
Or Saturday.
Or Saturday, you know, whatever, back in the day, or, you know, every week if I could, because that's interesting. So we've basically seen one of the dynamics that drove nullsec for the last couple of years was actually the tension between Pandemic Legion and Black Legion, and to see BL just sort of die such a crappy death is, well, it's a bit shit, isn't it, really?
It is a huge shame, but I mean, you haven't heard much from Black Legion itself for months now. Ever since Brave left Fountain, you haven't really heard anything out of Black Legion. And there is a actual alliance, a small contingent of them that are still in Fountain. They formed a new alliance called the Culture that own some systems in Fountain already, and I think they're going to try and rebuild themselves up.
Are they like Ian Banks role players? I mean, I love Ian Banks, I love the Culture, so I can't really argue with that. Half of our ship names at some point have been Culture GSV names, but interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so we just have to keep an eye out for them, see what happens. And I mean, maybe they can rebuild, but the Fountain natives have always been hell on anyone living in Fountain, so we'll have to see how they do with their lower numbers.
One of the difficulties that we have here is that this is, I mean, I think that Black Legion kind of, the beginning of the end for them was Phoebe, right? When you started seeing Black Legion sacrificing their dreadnought fleets rather than moving them across the game, they couldn't easily or safely move capitals, jump fatigue, and that took out one of the things that they specialized in, which was doing ninja sieges, right? Like Black Legion back during the Fountain War and all those periods specialized in being able to take a dreadnought fleet, hit structures, and be completely and utterly invulnerable, essentially. They would be in and out inside of 5 minutes before you could react. And Phoebe removed that ability from that organization. And after that, it was just sort of, that was that, I guess.
Well, and one of the big things, though, is... looks like I can't get any stuck. One of the big things, though, with that is or not Pan Legion, Black Legion actually made a lot of enemies. So anytime they were to even undock a capital ship, you would have a lot of people hunting them. So they can't move them. They couldn't move them at all. So they were forced to sacrifice like 300 to 400 mil per dread by self-destructing, and you just can't keep up with that price, losing that money. People just don't like it, and if you can't move anywhere with your capitals safely, then you just kind of stagnate and die like they did.
Well, this sort of ties into the news that we're going to get from CCP that we'll go into in a moment about the first discussion of lengthening, not necessarily lengthening jump distance, but reducing the amount of fatigue that you get from up to 30 days, which was just ridiculous, down to 5 days to allow people to play with their capitals on weekends, essentially. That's the first sign of a ray of light regarding the jump fatigue changes. Unfortunately, that was just not fast enough to save Black Legion from their internal drama and whatever was getting them.
I think that's a good enough segue of any, and then that we can go ahead and roll into the changes.
We have a couple of more things that we got to go through in terms of nullsec news. As somebody was putting out in chat, it's not just a footnote, but Mortis Angels did actually have a Titan, very briefly. And it died after about an hour after it was bought. There was, Titan deaths happen all the time these days because there's only so many places that you can move a Titan around in lowsec. Again, due to the Phoebe changes, shortening up the amount of distance you can go. So it's easy to catch Titans. That way we see 3 or 4 die in a week now. In this case, some guy from MOA decided to try to buy a Titan from a producer, and then they got caught inside of an hour and destroyed. So they had it for an hour at least.
Yeah, well, I think the big drama with that was Titans
31 minutes. Sorry, yeah. 31 minutes. 31 minutes was how long they had a Titan. My bad.
Yes. I didn't really pay attention to the Titan dying because Titans are dying so much recently from lowsec and Phoebe and jump fatigue, and it's really, really painful to see. But the thing is I think what released from that is a lot of MOA drama is talking about don't lose your super caps and blah blah blah. Reddit was swamped with posts about MOA yelling at this guy for losing his ship. For his ship that he paid for. And I believe there's a lot of drama with him, like Corpse leaving or wanting to leave MOA because of that decision.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Especially, that's just poor management. But we don't want to crap on. The thing is that if we crap on our enemies too much on the show, it's just poor form. Segueing away from that, talking about Titan deaths, I was actually just linked. Apparently, just 7 minutes ago, Darkness lost a Titan from Sort Dragons Corp. This actually might be Sort Dragons Titan. It's Mrs. Elshock from Resilience, which is Sort Dragons Corporation. Lost his Erebus and 3BK in Aquarius. I'm looking at it right now. It's got a bunch of PL on the kill mail. It looks like primarily, is this mostly subcaps killing them? Where are the caps? Did this Titan die?
That is nothing but Black Ops battleships.
That was a Black Ops battleship gank of an Erebus. Yes. Congratulations to PL. They are apparently celebrating the complete and total dissolution of their former challengers, Black Legion, by killing more Sword Dragon, which is the sport of champions, apparently, for some time now.
There's also a token Nulli Secunda at the very bottom of the Hector. But the big thing about the Black Ops there is they have longer jump range than carriers and Titans and all that, and they incur less fatigue. I believe that's accurate. Don't correct me if I'm wrong. That's what you guys are here for. But the big thing about those battleships, you're looking at 800, 900 DPS, depending on their fit, even 1,000 DPS, and they all have newts. Every single one of them typically will have newts fit, so killing an Arab, especially one fitted like this, is not very hard.
Yeah, this is one of the things that PL has been advocating for. A lot of the alliances that used to generate content for their members by not, like, in between wars, PL would spend a lot of time doing fishing. Like Rocket X and his crew of super cap fishermen would hunt these things, and Phoebe changes really kind of removed a lot of that fun. So Black Ops battleships, clearly they're adapting and they're succeeding, and congratulations to them. The token Nulli Secunda Hector, Nulli Secunda having, of course, closed its doors, is probably just one of the old school PL spies in Nulli.
that actually is kind of like icing on the cake. Like, here's our guy, guys. We're just gonna put it on our kill mail so you guys know he's been sitting at us all this time.
All right, well, let's go ahead and segue into CCP, please, because we have a ton of stuff to go over, which is really nice to see.
Yes.
Like we had sort of a lack of things we could discuss. From the top level, we had news from Game of Drones with some discussions with Citadels, and Nullarbor was, of course, a guest on the Meta Show a couple weeks back. But the floodgates have opened during the CSM Summit, and so we are seeing a lot.
And there was a lot of criticism for CCP because they released Age of Sovereign and we heard nothing for like 2 months, and now we're getting it all at one lump sum, and it's a lot to take in. I mean, there's a lot of CSM minutes you need to read, and there's a lot of patches or patch notes and all that you have to read to keep up with it. But to kick things off, I mean, the biggest thing I think what was announced was from Seagull herself in her YouTube video was that they're going back to expansions. They're not getting rid of the 6-week cycle, but they're going to stop releasing features in the release cycles and use the 6-week release cycles as balance passes and bug fixes and stuff like that.
I think this is a really good idea. One of the problems that we've seen with the 6-week cycle is that there's nothing really for the player base to get excited about, because instead of having a package of features like you would have in an old expansion stuck together that people say, oh, we're getting this patch and we're going to have SOV fixes, or we're going to have this, that, or the other thing. It was just we're getting a little bit of SOV tweak here, a little bit of low sec tweak here, there. It would just be sort of random. It's also just not good for marketing. If you are in the games industry, when you do an expansion pack, a DLC, a major feature release, you get a blast wave of press, which draws attention to your game and gets new players into the game. And when CCP shifted to the 6-week release cycle, there was no more coverage about it, really, to speak of. At a certain point, I think the single biggest sign that there was something wrong with the 6-week release cycle is that players had trouble remembering the names of the expansions, right? Like, we all remember Apocrypha, Revelations, Cold War, all of these things way back in the day. Red Moon Rising, if you want to be super old school.
Yeah, that was mine right there. Was our RMR was the
exactly.
one.
and then, or Dominion, obviously. Mm-hmm. And then we get to a point now where, I have to remind myself, and I pay pretty close attention to what happens in EVE Online, what the next one is. I think the next one is, we had Galatea, the next one's Parallax.
The next one's Vanguard?
The fact that we even have to ask this question on this show proves the point. So enough said about that. It is very much a good thing that they are choosing to do this.
And one more thing about that point is the biggest issue I saw with the 6-week release cycle is you have stuff like Aegisov, and you, instead of getting it in one lump sum as you would in an expansion, you're getting it piecemeal style. So you're having to, like, well, is there more, or is this all we get? And so people are going to rush out with their pitchforks and torches for a half-complete system, whereas with an expansion it should have already been done. I think that's definitely the biggest thing that I can think of.
I think somebody is, Blackjack SAO is telling us that it's Vanguard is the one that's coming up. I think Parallax is the one that's going to have the changes to node decay, which is important. That is a good segue. So the biggest news that we've had, in addition to the changes in the expansion cycle, or having expansions again, is that we're getting node decay in, major FozzySov, Aegisov fix, where these things are going to regenerate over time, so that's good. And the Troll Scepters are getting nerfed, which is good. You're not going to be able to put an Entosis link on an Interceptor. The Interceptor nerf is going in on September 29th, I believe. And then in November, we're going to see the node decay or node regeneration, whatever they're calling it. So that's going to be a big deal. But the single biggest item, I think, was spelled out in all capital letters in a very large font on the Citadel blog, which was posted by Team Game of Drones now. Once again, no longer are we having an individual dev having a blog pinned on them, which is good. It's sensible. We shouldn't have to, have everybody calling FozzySov. So Team Game of Drones released this blog, and it said, huge letters, that Entosis links will have nothing to do with Citadel and structured gameplay. This is massive on so many levels, many of them political.
Just drop the mic and walk away after that one, really.
It's basically like, it was hard for me to go back to reading the blog, because like you see that there on the top of the blog, and then you're just like, my mind is blown. Okay, this changes everything, and then you kind of have to step away from it.
And I actually go ahead and link that into chat, guys. If you've not read the Citadels dev blog, it's right there, and you can follow along kind of as we go through it as well.
Well, Aerith also disagrees with us here in chat. He's pointing out that it is not actually the biggest change, but it is not so much that Entosis links will have nothing to do with Citadels. it is more the political dynamics of this, right? Like, we are seeing CCP change their course. Previously speaking, Intosis links were supposed to be the big new thing. The player base has been pretty much, I won't say unanimous, but pretty much on the same page that there's been a lot of trouble with the gameplay affiliated with Intosis links. And so having them step back and do it in such a loud and clear way and say, you know what, we're not going to put this in the system after all, it's an about face. They're listening to the community instead of sticking to their guns and saying, we're going to force you to use these hacking links even if you don't like them. I see it as a breath of fresh air. I'm delighted that Team Game of Thrones has really been front and center in terms of player feedback, interfacing with the community, listening to reason, talking to what the customers want. And it was just wonderful to see that there.
Well, it's actually I would say probably a pretty recent change, because just as short of 2 weeks ago is when Nullabora was on, he was still talking about Intosis links being used against these, and then 2 weeks after that with the CSM summit, it's now reversed. So I mean, maybe that's something we can give kudos to our CSM representative for. I mean,
it's entirely possible. So one of the things about the CSM Summit that's interesting is if you look in the minutes, which are very heavily NDA'd, but one of the first sessions to talk about SOV and nullsec and gameplay, I want to give a particular shout out here to Scion, because I'm totally unbiased, our Chief of Staff in Goonswarm and our most senior CSM representative. Scion insisted that it be added into the minutes. I'm guessing he insisted. Maybe he just said it in a very forceful robot voice.
Yeah, he is a robot.
he is our favorite robot. But one of the things that he pointed out, and this is key, guys, this is sort of like CSM politics stuff that doesn't really have much to do with spaceships blowing up. But Scion insisted that it get into the minutes that the CSM had accurately predicted and provided feedback to CCP in advance of Aegis SOV, predicting all of the criticisms that the player base had brought up, all of the things that the player base was unhappy with, and that CCP has now had to go back and adapt to. So it was a statement as to the strength of the advice and the feedback of the CSM, which was true. The fact that it was not acted upon, true. The fact that the controversy could have been avoided, true. And the fact that that is in the minutes now and that CCP is changing things shows that they are realizing this and listening to it and adapting, which is good. They could have given everybody the finger and stuck to their guns, and they didn't. So kudos to them. Well done.
Well, and they didn't have to actually put that in the minutes. I don't think they'd have to actually admit fault to it, but they're willing to get down on a knee and actually take it and say, hey guys, we fucked up, we messed up, and it's our fault, and the CSM is not to blame. And I guess just skip a point real quick, since we're talking about CSM minutes, there is a new website out that actually shows what's going on with the CSM and contact information for getting in touch with CSM. And I'm going to drop that in chat for you guys. So if you ever looking to get in touch with them or looking at what the CSM doing, that's a new thing that came out of the CSM summit this week. It is csm.eveonline.com, and it is in chat for you as well.
Yeah, I shouldn't, Toru Bushido was pointing out in chat, I shouldn't be referring to Scion as our most senior. He's senior in terms of seniority because he was there the previous year, but Indy and Corbex and Thoric Frosthammer and all of the people who've been working on the CSM deserve credit for this, because it really is a team effort to have a mature dialogue and have CCP come to the table and implement all these changes. One thing that is sort of affiliated with this, which is a really interesting piece of news as well, is there's been a huge controversy within the Alliance tournament. And this is something that we probably should have brought up earlier, but have you been paying attention to this, Laz? Did you see how CCP froze all of the prizes from the Alliance tournament?
Yeah, a little bit different. They actually froze the prizes for Camel and Warlords, which were the two
for
teams
just those two, right?
Which is what the controversy is revolving around. And the controversy is how they practice together. And DHB Wildcat, one of the members of Warlords of the Deep, posted a blog with logs and stuff like that, saying that one of the match, I think the first time that Warlords and Camel fought in this tournament, they actually rigged it where one would go down to the loser brackets. That way they could come back and fight in the finals. So I think they're kind of looking at collusion and just trying to see what they're going to do about it. And CCP, I think, did the right thing by freezing the assets, and we just have to kind of wait and see what Logibro and the rest of the devs decide to do with it. But I don't know. What happened is Warlords and Camel are practice mates, and they've always been close, and they're top tier tournament teams. and this kind of stinks of what happened a few years ago, where the finals were just completely rigged.
Well, that is one of the things that we used to see, and was a challenge for the company, because when you have a lot of promotion, a lot of hype, a lot of eyeballs from outside of EVE on an Alliance tournament, there's people who don't play EVE, it's their first opportunity to take a look at it, and so that's why it's become kind of a metagaming free zone. So I thought that was interesting. I'm glad that somebody came forward to reveal that, because if the AT becomes a sham, and of course you used to be an Alliance tournament commentator, weren't you as well, Laz?
Yes, Alliance Tournament I was commentator. I meant to apply this year, but I missed the application date, unfortunately, which I'm really sad about, because I wasn't able to hang out with Elise at the tournament. But I mean,
alas,
I know. But the big thing there is, and like Aerith is pointing out in chat, is Warlords of the Deep, formerly known as Hydra, was called and banned from the Alliance tournament previously for something similar, which was the rig tournament I was talking about a few years ago.
That was one of the first, right? Exactly. So these are essentially the same people getting in trouble again. They changed their name. Yeah. I think at that point, if you're affiliated with an organization that has done this before, maybe next time they should all be removed from it, or at least there needs to be better oversight, because this is fool me once, shame on you; fool me twice, shame on me. That sort of affair.
Yeah, and the big thing is going into this tournament, a lot of people felt that CCP putting on the tournament was more that they felt like they had to and not that they wanted to. Because the big thing about the tournament is all the devs that work on the tournament are donating their time. If I remember correctly, they're not getting paid for any of the tournament stuff. Like CCP runs it and pays for the running the feeds and all that, but they don't. I'm pretty sure the devs don't actually get paid for their time on the tournament.
I don't know. That doesn't make any sense, but we'll take a look at it. We should probably move on away from that. We have more details on the Amar succession trials, and good timing on that, because we see that the true Emperor of Amar, Maximilian Singularity VI, first of his name, has deigned to grace us with his presence in chat. Hello to Maximilian Singularity VI, first of his name, the true Emperor. And we are having the Amar succession trials, and we've got a 4v4 format and a gold magnet. You want to speak to that a little bit, Laz?
Yeah, so the gold magnet was removed. Oh my god, I don't even remember when it was removed. It's been so long. And the gold and silver magnet was removed, like I said, probably 67 years ago. I mean, it's been a long time. But basically, the way they're going to be doing is a 4v4 format where you have the champion who's looking to be the successor to the throne of Amar, and then 3 of his, I guess, personal guards or something. I mean, basically it's 3 of his companions will go and have a 4v4 tournament, and you fight your way up brackets, and I believe it's for each family, which I believe there's 4 families in the Amar, and they fight their way to the top of the bracket, and then whoever wins each family will then fight each other, and the winner of the top families champions will be the new successor, as far as I can tell, and the winners of the families will get the gold magnates, and then the runner-ups will be the silver magnate.
Well, the only family that really matters in my world is the House of Singularity, so yes. We're going to be rooting for them regardless of what is on the label.
I'm looking at applying as well, so hopefully maybe I can go
Excellent.
champion Max Singularity.
Well, it has been a ton of different things. I mean, let's go back to the Citadel dev blog as well. Like, in addition to saying that there's nothing involving hacking links, which is good, they basically have a new system. There's still a vulnerability window, but there is essentially a reinforcement system, and there's been an acknowledgement, 2 things. One, there's been an acknowledgement that you need to have a role for dreadnoughts, and then as a follow-up, shortly after all of these dev blogs were released, Seagull posted her YouTube video, took command very publicly, excellent job. Then once we saw that they were announcing that at EVE Vegas, we are finally going to hear some details about the upcoming capital and super capital rebalance. There's been acknowledgement of a need for a role for dreadnoughts. We're going to hear about it at Vegas, and we know that the CSM, at least, was very excited about this, and we've been in the dark. Now we know something, at least, as to when we're going to hear about it.
Yeah, and I think it's probably the biggest 3 points that I took from those was the Citadel's no longer hacked, but instead shot, like you said, dreadnoughts, or supers, titans, stuff like that, depending on what they do with the rebalance. And then you have damage mitigated past a certain point. So you won't have myself or PL or some other group with a ton of capitals drop 1,000 dreadnoughts and kill it instantly. But basically, if you look on the dev blog, which I pasted in chat again, and scroll down, there's actually a damage graph saying that actually describes the exact mitigation. So basically, an extra large citadel will start getting mitigated after about 20 dreadnoughts worth of damage, which means anything past that 20 dreadnoughts worth of damage doesn't count anymore.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So the damage just stops. Is it possible to kill a citadel in one sitting under the system if you had enough time going after it, or
no.
is there always going to be a way around?
There's three timers. So
Okay.
once shield hits 0, it goes back into invulnerability, and then it comes back out again at a which they haven't actually, don't think they posted the timers for that, but after that it comes back out again into armor, and once armor reaches 0, it goes back into reinforced or invulnerability mode, as they call it, and then for a hull. So you have 3 chances to save that structure. And there's a lot of information in this dev blog. If you haven't read it, you really need to go through and read it, because we don't have time to actually go through all the fine points.
Well, one of the things that I'm going to go ahead and point out, I mean, Aerith, of course, is here in chat and providing a lot of hard truths. We've already calculated that you can go and suicide Brutix fleets for about 12.5 billion ISK a pop to just attack any of these things at all of these timers, such that if you can't destroy all those Brutixes using some sort of area effect weapon, which we don't have anymore besides bombs, there's really nothing that's going to be able to keep somebody from dealing with that. At least that's the theory of Aerith on the finance team. So
well,
we'll have to see how that plays out.
You also have to remember that with those Brutixes, like, these citadels are not going to be a pushover. If there's someone gunning these citadels, they're going to have a plethora of weaponry. I mean, and even some of the weapons are actually going to be AoE based. So basically, if you're grouped up and this person shoots this, I guess, AoE rocket or something, and it lands in the middle and just completely wrecks your fleet. I mean, the weapons, they're designing citadels not to be like the current POS where, oh, as guns or whatever. These guns are supposed to hurt. And that's something you really have to pay attention to, and that's something I'm really looking forward to. And there's a lot of images here. If you scroll through, look at the graphs, you'll be able to see some of the big stuff.
Well, we're talking mainly about a winter timeline for this stuff, too. So, I mean, we should be able to see some of the first iterations of this, and winter is right around the corner. I can see it's getting to be fall here in Wisconsin. It's starting to no longer be 90 degrees. So maybe...
I should move to Wisconsin.
Well, the node decay stuff, the node regeneration mechanic, whatever they want to call it, is coming in November. And so maybe it's towards the end of November. And so perhaps at around that time, that patch, I don't know whether CCP means winter in the sense of like November, December, or January, February. It kind of depends upon the new expansion cycle that they want to use.
Well,
so
ever since FanFest, they said the very first structure, the very first Citadel would be out before 2016. And even though I would commend them for keeping that, please don't rush it out. Like, we'll wait an extra couple months if that's what it takes. I mean, just do it right.
Yeah, and the player feedback system that Game of Drones has been using has been excellent, because you're watching this adapt. Nullarbor has been interfacing with the community. He's not the leader of that team. He's just one of that team. And we've watched the Citadels evolve, and the player base is far more excited about that than they were through the implementation of the Aegis Sov mechanics. So, listen to the player base, do it right. If it has to be delayed, that's great. We're with you. I mean, we all want to see Eve succeed and continue to do better, and avoid all of these ex post facto tweaks to hacking situations, like with the Troll Scepter nerf, the speed limit, all these things that have had to be bolted on to the Aegis Sov system months down the line.
Yep, and I'm going to hit one more point on the Citadels, guys, before we have to swap over. Well, not have to. I'm looking forward to swapping over and bringing on Jeff Edwards, acclaimed author. Is the Citadels, they cannot be remote repaired. You're not.
That's interesting. Because, I mean, used to, under the Dominion Sov system, we would have a situation where any given outpost could essentially be perfectly defended by parking an Archon fleet on top of it, right? You just park 200 carriers on the thing. People are trying to reinforce that structure. If somebody actually gets shot on the Archon, they can de-aggress and dock up just fine. And so it would be essentially impossible with a serious block-level defense. And we saw that displayed in the Halloween War. On a couple of occasions, you would see these massive fleets just sitting on an undock repping a station. There's nothing you could do about it.
Yeah, and as Eric said, that's why he says the Brutixes could work. But basically, if you have a fleet there that can instantly kill the Brutixes, then it won't work. And it takes 60 minutes, I believe, to repair a Citadel, an extra large Citadel, or any null sec Citadel is 60 minutes, and it goes for 30 minutes in low sec and then 10 minutes in high sec. That's
Well,
how
the
long
theory
it takes to prepare.
crafting is going to be fascinating here
Yeah.
because, a lot of this is going to change between now and then. It's always nice that we have these scenarios presented such that we can show them to CCP and they can design around it if that's not something that they actually want. So excellent. Thank you for that spreadsheet.
Yep. So I'm going to try to call Jeff Edwards in here and get him onto the show, guys. Jeff Edwards is a really, really awesome author, and if you haven't read his books, you should really check out The Seventh Angel and Dome City Blues. Those are my two favorite. And I'm going to bring him in now.
Actually, while we're calling him in, I want to talk to people a little bit about one of the reasons why we're bringing Jeff Edwards on is to commemorate the return of the book review section on TMC. When we did you probably noticed that the website has changed substantially over the last couple weeks. Hey, Jeff, how you doing?
Hey, how you doing?
Doing all right. You're looking very swag in your bright green Kraken headset there. I love it.
Yes.
That's excellent. So before we get into who you are and what you've written and why we have you on the show, just as an introduction to everyone, Jeff is in San Diego with a lot of our friends out there. And from the infamous patio, this is in one of our libraries out there. It's a great place where you've seen a lot of our TMC Command Center parties and things like that. But our readers are all sci-fi nerds. We all love books. We all love to read. Many of our users in EVE Online and on TMC, of course, have a military background or veterans. And so there's a lot of overlap. And you are a unique author in that you're writing not just techno thrillers in the vein of Tom Clancy's writing, but you also have a background writing science fiction of sort of a cyberpunk noir. Like Dome City Blues is fantastic because I basically feel
thank you.
into like it's different from Blade Runner, but it's got that same feel, that kind of Neuromancer Blade Runner feel to it that I just love. So I love that. We have at last book reviews are back on TMC. You can go to the website right now. You can see we've changed our grid. The book review section has returned. A lot of these services that we had back in the day are being restored slowly as our development team ramps up. And so to commemorate the return of that, as well as to announce their partnership with a lot of authors, Jeff Edwards of whom is the first, is going to be working to introduce player stories, things that our community have done in fiction, top-tier fiction by quality authors, about the kind of things that our community have experienced. This is sort of like what CCP has done with the True Stories comic books. We saw that and we were like, that is a fantastic idea. And we happened to know Jeff and a few other really interesting authors, and we said, this is great. We should look into this. So, Jeff, we're delighted to have you here with us today.
Oh, cool. I'm glad to be here.
So, Laz, what is your favorite book of Jeff's?
I haven't finished Dome City Blues yet. I have finished Seventh Angel, and I can't actually read, but I can. But my previous job, I drove around a lot, so I listened to a lot of audiobooks. So listening to The Seventh Angel, it was probably one of my favorite books, and that's what got me hooked on his other series, the Dome City Blues, and it's something that I'm looking to dig more and more into. So Jeff, I could commend you, especially in Dome City Blues. I can't put the book down. I've actually started reading it properly, not an audiobook.
There's nothing wrong with audiobooks.
I just feel dirty.
The audiobook, by the way, I think is Adam McLaughlin did the audiobook. That's only been out for a few weeks for Dome City Blues, but I'm really pleased with that. I think he knocked that one out of the ballpark.
Excellent. So how did you get started doing this? I mean, you had a trilogy of extremely popular books based upon your background in the Navy. Can you tell us a little about yourself, how you got started writing, and that experience that you have in your real world, your position, what you do, what you did when you were in the service? Can you tell us a little bit about that, how you got started?
Well, interestingly enough, I actually started out writing sci-fi. I was writing high-tech detective novels, kind of cyberpunk, techno-noir, whatever the hell you want to call it, and loving it and having a blast. Well, when my agent started shopping Dome City Blues around the major New York publishers, they all said, hey, this is fantastic, but this guy's got a strong military background. Why isn't he writing military thrillers? And my answer was, because I don't want to. It wasn't that my agent said, well, that's crazy. You've got a shelf full of Tom Clancy. You've got a shelf full of Dale Brown. You've got a shelf full of Joe Buff. I know you love that shit. Why don't you want to write it? And my answer was, because I didn't think I could bring anything to the genre that I hadn't seen before. I didn't think I could do anything that somebody else wasn't already doing better than I was. But my agent kept bugging me and bugging me and bugging me. And finally one day he said, I'll make you a deal. He said, you write me 10 honest pages. I swear to God, I will never ask for page number 11. That's all I'm asking for, 10 pages. If you're not hooked on it by 10 pages, I'll never ask for page number 11. So I finally sat down to bang out 10 quick pages. They weren't going to be, they weren't, I wasn't trying to make them good. I was sandbagging, if you will. I wasn't interested in writing a military thriller.
Right.
About 19 hours later, having worked almost completely around the clock, I was completely exhausted. I stood up. I was about 80 pages into the book, and I was completely in love with it. And that was the book that eventually became Sea of Shadows.
That started out as Torpedo, right?
It did. It started out originally as Torpedo. Actually, even before Torpedo, it was called Emergency Tango. But it turns out that we couldn't use that term. That turned out to be a NATO protected term that they wouldn't let us use.
Wow.
So,
now that you are so involved in the military world. You were in the Navy, and now you're doing something that I'm not really sure that we can talk about. What is the polite way of describing what you do for the military?
I wear 2 hats in the support that I do for the military. One hat is cybersecurity accreditation, essentially making sure that DoD networks and information systems get accredited and that they meet the vulnerability and intrusion standards and stuff that are required for DoD. That's one hat. The other hat is I write tactical doctrine, especially anti-submarine warfare and mine warfare related. I'm not so much the guy who comes up with the tactics. That's not my job. That's smarter heads than me. But if you get 60 incredibly smart people in the room and hash out what the tactics are supposed to look like, what they tend to turn out is we call it the pizza party effect. Is you get it almost looks like it's been written by monkeys by the time you get 60 different pairs of hands involved.
Right.
My job is to take that, turn it into something that's readable, turn it into something that's self-consistent, turn it into something that's interesting enough where somebody will actually pick it up and can read it without bleeding out the eye sockets. So my job is to essentially take a bunch of disjointed PowerPoint slides and a bunch of disjointed text and turn it into tactical doctrine.
Now, that's one of the reason why I was asking about this is you find yourself in an unusual position compared to many other authors in these genres, because you actually have to, like you mentioned, you can't use the term, you can't use certain terminology because of your clearances and because of your knowledge of actual military tactics and doctrines. Like you have to get some of these books and these words approved.
Absolutely true. In that particular case, that term isn't classified, or else I'd have to kill myself now for having uttered it on Twitch. But that term isn't classified. But it turns out that it is actually, or was actually, a NATO protected term, which is they only want it to be used in certain contexts. If Tom Clancy, and who's the late Tom Clancy, I should say, if he sat down to write a book, he never had a clearance. He was never trained in these things. There are some people who want to look at that with disdain and say, well, his stuff doesn't really count, because he wasn't there. It's like a virgin talking about sex. In my opinion, it's more impressive what he did rather than less impressive, because he did it without the background. He did it without the knowledge. He pieced all that stuff together. So while I have the advantage of knowing that stuff, I have the disadvantage of, to some degree, there's a leash on what I can say. If he figures out how a certain real world tactic works and then he disclosed it in his book, it's just Tom Clancy getting lucky. If I put that same tactic in one of my books, I'm not getting lucky. They know I already know the answer to the question. Therefore, I have now divulged something I'm not at liberty to do. So in order to prevent that from happening, not my science fiction books are not so much worried about. They're not worried that I'm going to guess right what's going to happen in 2063 in terms of cybernetic technology. However, in terms of the military thrillers that I write, I have to get permission from the Pentagon Office of Security Review and from what they call CNO OP96, the technical security branch of the Navy. So literally everything I do has to be blessed before I can release it.
Now, despite this, I mean, you have some restrictions, you have oversight on what you can write and what you've done. But from what I understand, a couple of your novels have been optioned by the producer of the Bourne Supremacy and the Bourne Ultimatum to be turned into motion pictures. Is that correct?
That's correct. Paul L. Sandberg, Bourne Supremacy, Bourne Ultimatum, Picking Up the Pieces. Really sharp guy, Hollywood guy. Hell of a lot of fun to work with. He fell in love initially with Dome City Blues. And
As
then,
one does.
Oh, thank you. That's I plied him with liquor until he lost enough brain cells to think it was a good book. No, actually, my agent showed it to him and he liked it, and then he said, "I want to see anything else this guy's written." And then he saw Sea of Shadows, and we're off to the races with two completely different movie projects, both in play right now.
That's really interesting. So, tying that around to, we were talking about Tom Clancy, we're in an unusual situation. One of the things that I thought was most curious about your background is is it true you were approached by Tom Clancy's estate? Is that correct? What's the story there?
I don't think I want to get too far into that question.
Okay.
Let's just
Wow,
let's,
nice, Alex.
let's just say that I was in consideration for one of the Tom Clancy series. And let's not talk about who asked me to do what. I'm not sure what I should disclose and what not.
No.
Let's just say, yeah, I was in discussions briefly.
That still seems like quite an honor, because Tom Clancy is such a huge series, especially in the military world when it comes to those novels. And to jump back a little bit from what you're talking about before with the first 10 pages and he wouldn't ask for 11, is that how a lot of your books start? Is that like you just start writing, aiming at 10 pages, and then just sometimes you get hooked?
Never. That was how I ended up getting into the military thriller thing. I actually had to, once I jumped off that particular cliff, I had to figure out how to build a parachute on the way down. I like to have a certain degree of planning in what I do. It took me a while to kind of find out where my magic level is. I've discovered that if I plan too much, I lose spontaneity, and then there's no fun in writing it, and there's no sense of discovery. I've discovered that that if I don't plan enough, I go down blind alleys and I waste 6 months of my time trying to figure out what the hell the plot looks like. So I'm looking for that magic zone in my initial planning where I know what the big arc is, I know what the major set pieces are, I know who's going to kind of do what to who, and then I get to discover all the stuff in the middle. That's kind of why I'm so excited about this idea of starting to do stuff in the gaming world, because if we're looking at histories of things that actually happened in games, I don't have to come up with a big arc. That's already been done. That battle's already been fought. You know, that particular act of betrayal has already taken place. Whatever. I just get to make up all the cool stuff that brings that world to life, which is why I'm kind of.
That's fascinating, actually, because one of the questions we just got in chat here from Helicon1, one of our very frequent viewers, he was asking whether you would be interested at some point in writing an EVE book. I mean, it's been a long time since there's been a book about EVE Online. There's a history book coming out that's written by a games journalist, but doesn't have anything to do with fiction. There's fiction books about EVE, but they're produced by CCP within the context of the lore. He'd like to know if you'd consider writing a book in the EVE universe.
I would definitely consider writing a book in the EVE universe. The EVE universe is it's freaking magnificent. I mean, it's got everything that you could possibly ask for. It's got cool ass technology. It's got betrayal. It's got sweeping panoramic vistas. It's got battles where sometimes there's thousands of ships involved, and sometimes it's just one tiny little act that takes place in an asteroid belt somewhere. It's macro to micro. It's everything that I love about writing. I would definitely be interested in that.
Yeah, I probably have a few stories, a few small fights I could tell you about.
Just a couple little fights.
Just one or two.
I think that's the dream for a lot of us. I mean, when we saw the True Stories project with CCP, with the comic book they did with Dark Horse that featured the disbanding Band of Brothers, there's so much potential there to, like, we do all these amazing things, and I think that as players we would really like to see, to ensure that our stories and the events, the things that we have done, don't get forgotten, right? That they actually get told and retold. And you originally, when you started your trilogy involving naval warfare, you went from science fiction to naval combat, which could easily be translated into starships if I'm thinking about it. You told me that a while back that it was word of mouth from the people who were actually there on the types of ships that you served on who helped get your books around, right? They're saying, I read that, yeah. And
absolutely. Absolutely. I would say 90% of 90+% of whatever footprint that I've got came from word of mouth, just from sailors going, holy shit, this is cool. I get reviewed by a lot of people. I've been, if you check, some of the blurbs are kind of cool, and I've gotten blurbs from literally some of the guys at the very top of the totem pole.
How does that feel? Yeah, I mean, sorry to interrupt, but this is actually a key point. starting out as an author, just doing it on a lark, writing science fiction, and the next thing you know, you've got Clive Cussler, you've got Greg Bear, you've got Joe Buff, you've got Gail Lynns, these people talking about how great your books are. How does that feel?
You ever see Wayne's World? I am not worthy. I'm not worthy. I'm so completely out of my depth with those people. But I'm incredibly, I'm incredibly grateful to all of them. That's, I still get blown away. I have a little bit of something called imposter syndrome. If you've ever heard of that.
I have.
If I do a book signing and somebody shows up at a book signing that was at a book signing I did before, I assume he came to get his money back. So I'm always kind of completely freaked out. It's funny, not too dreadful. Well, a couple of years ago, I got a text in the morning, early in the morning, about 6 o'clock. Well, early on a Sunday anyway, from Rear Admiral Wakowitz, who's now retired, but former commander, Naval Anti-Submarine Warfare Command, and just really sharp guy. He sends me a text, and it says, "Hey, have you read the new Clive Cussler book, Poseidon's Arrow?" I texted back, "No." He texts back, "Read chapter 26, then call me." I'm like, that's odd. So I downloaded it onto my Kindle. I sat there on my couch. First, I think I'll just jump forward to chapter 26 and find out kind of what happened. Then I think, well, no, it's a Dirk Pitt book. You got to freaking savor it. You got to enjoy it. So, and the chapters are short. So I just powered through and I'm enjoying it. And there's a certain point in the story in chapter 26 where Dirk Pitt's sitting on an aircraft and this NCIS officer is trying to talk to him. And he's ignoring her because he's engrossed in reading a Jeff Edwards novel. And I'm like, seriously? I just got name dropped by Clive Cussler and Dirk Cussler and this, and it's like that. It doesn't. Oh man, my head is still barely fits through doors. It's like I'm so overwhelmed by that.
You share that aspect with Alex here.
The difference is he probably has good reason for it. In my case,
I wouldn't go that far.
I could use a case of imposter syndrome. I think it would probably keep me a little bit more under control. But that is fascinating. One and two. I interrupted a question that I think is very important. You have authentic experience working in the Navy. You're working on naval tactics. You wrote this trilogy, and word spread, and you've been on the bestseller lists. You've got all of these top-tier people in the techno-thriller world and the espionage fiction world and in science fiction talking about how great your books are. One of the things that this ties back to with the question about EVE Online is, you know, if you were to write something about things that our players have done, potentially you'd see, do you think you would have a similar word of mouth effect like we had with the sailors who read your books?
I think we would. Well, I'll put it to you this way. If I got in that situation, if I wrote that book, you know, assuming that comes to pass, I think so. I mean, I think this is this incredible community. It's the people in this community are talking to each other all the time, and most of them, they're all gaming nerds, or at least I think they are. I tend to think they're mostly gaming nerds or mostly sci-fi nerds. This is exactly the audience that we want to reach, and sci-fi nerds talk to each other. You get 3 gaming nerds or 3 sci-fi nerds in a room and crack open a 6-pack of beer, they're immediately going to start talking about the kind of books they want to see. They're immediately going to start complaining that nobody's writing those books, or complaining about things like Firefly getting canceled. I mean, that was a decision that was made not at the decision to cancel Firefly. That wasn't made because there was anything wrong with the show. That wasn't made because it lost its fan base. That was somebody looked at a spreadsheet and says, down check on that particular category. Let's move on and do something else. We have a community where, I like to count myself. I'm still a noob as far as playing EVE, but I mean the gamer community as a whole, the gaming community as a whole, we got this huge engine that very, very, very few people have ever harnessed in terms of communications. I think most of the stuff's been done at the corporate level. I think it'd be be interesting to do something, you know, kind of at the community level.
I mean, I don't want to make Laz's head explode here, but I mean, if you had a situation, somebody of your quality was writing up a story about, say, BR5, that would just be amazing all the way around, right? We could see. I mean, what would that do for you, Laz? Like, would you like to read about you in BR5?
I mean, the Wired article was a pretty big ego boost as well. So I mean, I don't know if I'll be able to handle an entire book or even a section of a book. I mean, that would be pretty mind blowing. I mean, I've got goosebumps just thinking about it. Yeah, I think I'd love it. Yeah, I'd have to say that.
Somebody on the chat just asked if I'm a newbie, and the answer is yes.
Oh. And TheMittani, can you please turn your camera off and on?
Yeah,
Webcam.
it looks like my video cut out there for a second, guys. Let me return, see if I can avoid screwing up the Skype.
And while we're at that short little pause,
I think you're being jammed.
yeah, probably.
Apparently so.
And while we're at that short little pause, guys, go ahead and type in chat, guys. We're going to go ahead and start giveaways. We're starting to run down on the time here. I wish we had another hour of this show. Like, there's so many weekends lately that we wish we had that extra amount of time, but unfortunately we don't. So, guys, I need you guys to go and type in chat for the giveaways. We have two giveaways to give. One is 2 sets of ship codes, and then we also have an EVE Universe book that we're going to be giving out. So thanks to CCP for those, and thanks again to Blue for sponsoring the Meta Show here. If you see all of our wonderful Blue mics here on screen.
We are shameless about our product placement.
Yes.
We do not lie to you. We will not say that we are not doing product placement. These are Blue microphones. These are Razer Kraken headsets. That's how we roll, because that's why we're able to do these giveaways. So thank you all so much for CCP, for Blue microphones, for Razer for the support, because it allows us to give our people the best, because our people deserve the best. But just as an aside here and bringing it back to Jeff, part of my problem in trying to interview you is I get so excited about the opportunity here that I run my mouth. One of the rules is I'm supposed to ask a question and shut up. But what I see here, and the reason why I'm so hyped about this, is you have an author who can do sci-fi. Proven success, optioned in Hollywood for his sci-fi writing, right? Dark, gritty sci-fi. Not Star Trek, everything's happy sci-fi, but nasty, gritty, dirty sci-fi. What is EVE? Nasty, gritty, dirty sci-fi. And you do tactics for the Navy, naval warfare. Best-selling author, naval warfare books. You combine these two, I mean, I would like to read about any of our spaceship battles that we've had in EVE, written by a guy like you who understands naval combat to the point that he can write about it as well as you have, and also gets gritty sci-fi. So if I seem a little fanboyish, it's because I kind of am, and I apologize. It's just amazing.
I'm not so comfortable with all the accolades, but I have to tell you, we are talking about my sweet spot. That's exactly where I like to write. So that's I'm like I say, I'm still surprised people buy my books. I still think they're going to come and ask for their money back, but so far they haven't done that. And but I'm no, we're talking exactly my sweet spot. It's like I started out writing sci-fi, ended up writing military thrillers. I'd love to be writing right there in that middle zone.
Military sci-fi thrillers, basically.
Military sci-fi thrillers.
I'm going to interrupt you right now just because this comment in chat. 1 copy ordered of 7th Angel, and I'm shipping it to Norway now because of this interview.
Yeah, it is actually. I'm going to go ahead, and since we do shameless product placement, I'm going to go ahead and suggest that you guys Amazon Kindle as well. Just any of Jeff's stuff is amazing, and you can see it's been like you've been in #1, #2 in the Amazon bestseller sections for military thriller. You've been in the top 100 list of bestsellers for Amazon. Part of the fanboying here is that even if you are overwhelmed by having Clive Cussler and Greg Bear saying such nice things about you, you're a big deal, Jeff. I mean, so guys, check his stuff out on Amazon.
Somebody should tell that to my kids. I'm pretty sure they would.
Well, you can't ever buy into your own hubris, right? You'll get into trouble. But that is, you are the humility that you have is amazing, especially considering the quality of writing. You haven't let it go to your head, and that's wonderful. Because I would let it go to.
It probably already has.
I just want to throw fastballs across the plate as hard as I can. That's all I want to do. I want to write the best books I can do and have a good time doing it. That's my entire goal.
Yeah, as long as you're having fun with it, man.
Well, I'm having a blast.
Yes. Well, like you said, you started 10 pages, and then 19 hours later. 19 hours later.
19 hours. And I'm not kidding. It was 19 freaking hours.
I'm going to go ahead. I've linked it in chat, actually. That's the Jeff Edwards page on the U.S. version of Amazon. You can take a look at all of it. Dome City Blues, Angel City Blues, Sword of Shiva, and Laz's favorite book is the 7th Angel. So it's excellent.
Well, I don't know. I know. I just started reading Dome City Blues, and it might. I don't know. It's.
I'm fascinated to find out that Dome City Blues was the first. Was that. That's amazing.
Yeah, Dome City Blues actually got tied up in a very complicated joint book movie deal that was supposed to be T-shirts and lunchboxes and action figures, and I actually lost control of the book for a while. So while that book was being controlled by forces outside of my reach, I went ahead and wrote Sea of Shadows, and then we got Dome City Blues back and published that and moved on.
That's amazing.
So,
I mean, that's
that
a
was my
problem of
first
success,
book,
right? You write a book, and then Hollywood snaps it up and takes it away from you briefly, and then you got to get it back, and you know, first world problems. That's amazing.
Oh
Okay,
yeah, that's
well,
a major first world problem.
It's hard out there. The struggle is real. Speaking of the struggle, boys and girls, it is time for us to make it rain and give back to our community. Thank you so much for CCP for the things that we are about to shower upon you, just for watching and following the channel. Make sure you're chatting at channel as well.
If you're not following, guys, you cannot win. So the first giveaway is going to be 2 codes. We're giving away 2 codes, 2 different roles, and it's for pirate faction rookie ships. And what you'll do is you email the Twitch channel, which is a little button down at the bottom of the screen itself, and you give us what you won, and just tell us what you want, and I'll send you the code, and then you redeem it in the store. So rolling it now. Gus Bus 8664, also subscriber man. Thank you so much for the subscription as well and support. You've won, and as he says, as I roll, it says rigged already. Exactly.
He's saying it's rigged. It's rigged.
Always
rigged. You should be happy. All rigged all the time.
that is the motto here, guys. Always rigged. So next roll is going to be Bryn1337, Bryn Leet there. You have won, second code, man. Just go ahead and message channel that you've won, and I'm going to go ahead and throw this channel quickly into subscribers mode.
Oh, yeah.
So this is for our physical giveaway, and so subscribers, make sure that you're talking. Thank you for helping out. Also, I'm watching in chat before all of the rigged. People are buying Jeff Edwards' books left and right, so I guess we should be doing shameless plugs more often. But you know, I think it's the fanboyism that they see from me losing control of my enthusiasm and embarrassing myself. But you know, hey, it's for a good cause.
All right, guys. So it's in subscriber mode now. I need everyone to type something right now. Type something in chat right now. Get that subscriber mode hype right now. We're going to be giving away a Dark Horse Comics stories of what is it? Eve's True Stories book signed by some asshole in a red shirt.
Speaking of player stories getting put into comics and things like that, and how much we'd like to see more of that, here is the first one of these that CCP has given us, and I have actually signed with my horrible handwriting, and you can get a book that says "The Mittani sends his regards" in it.
Yes.
And then you can use it for, I don't know. I don't know what you'd want to use it for, but that's my imposter syndrome kicking in right there. But it's a great comic, and it's a little weird to see yourself in a comic. I guess that's the same thing that Jeff has gone through. Curious.
Okay, so going to be doing the rolls in just a minute. Go ahead and get that sub hype in there if you haven't already. Also, guys, later tonight, right after the show, we have the Undead Zone, followed by the Boat Show. And then tonight, again at 8 p.m., I'm doing Scared Shitless Saturdays, where I play games that I really hate playing, which are horror games. Tonight, we're either playing Amnesia or Outlast. I'm not sure yet. Whichever you guys pick when the stream starts. But basically, I hate horror games, so you get to watch me screen. There's some really awesome screen caps from last time.
All right, let's do the giveaway.
Yes. Here we go. Sub hype. That was not a subscriber. That
You failed to put it in subscribers only mode. It's all good. Just hit rolls.
I'm just going to keep rolling.
That's what I've done before. It works.
It's okay. And then the add-on bugged. Really thing. Roll. All right. CTU Bauer has won copy of Eve True Stories. Thank you so much, CTU. Make sure
I think he's won a whole bunch of other things before. Is this his first win? Anyway, congratulations, dude. We're going to get it. Make sure when you send us the message to the Twitch channel to include your name and address so we can ship the book to you. Otherwise, we can't get it to you, and then you won't have my weird little scribble that some people would call a signature. But now that we're wrapping things up, I just want to thank Jeff Edwards so much for showing up here and enduring me fanboying at him relentlessly about...
Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, it's amazing to have you on, dude. I'm so excited about what we're going to be doing. It's going to be fantastic. And apparently our viewers agree as well because of all the people talking about how they're buying your books and how they've already read them. So that's awesome as well. But Laz, you want to take us off? Have us wave or however we...
Quick shout out to CCP for the giveaways and Blue for the sponsor.
Blue microphones?
And Razor for the Krakens. So guys, after that, we'll see you on the next show. At least I'll see you on the next show. And if not, you'll see the Mittani next Saturday. So,
absolutely.
Thanks again, Jeff,
Fantastic.
and we'll see you guys later.
Thank you. Thanks.